Hundreds of thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of Hong Kong Island in a mass rally to demand greater democracy and air grievances against the government on the 17th anniversary of the handover.
Organisers are expecting a record turnout, and while it's been mostly peaceful so far, the rally is expected to stretch into the night as huge crowds are still marching. ATV's Emily Sue reports.
They gathered in the sweltering heat early this afternoon, filling up all 6 football pitches in Victoria Park. The sea of umbrellas this time was to block out the sun, but they would soon need them for the rain. When those at the league began marching at 3 p.m., more crowds were still pouring into Victoria Park, and over an hour later, there were still thousands waiting for their turn to get going. Thousands of police officers were deployed along the route to keep the peace and manage the crowd flow as the massive procession made its way through the streets of Causeway Bay and Wan Chai to government headquarters in Tamar. While this annual tradition is an opportunity for anyone unhappy with government policies to air grievances, the focus this year was centered around democratic reform as Hong Kong prepares to elect its next chief executive in 2017. Organizers were hoping to beat the turnout of 500,000 back in 2003 that led to then Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa stepping down. They were expecting a big boost from the public alarm sparked by the State Council's white paper on Hong Kong's autonomy, which asserted Beijing's total authority over the SAR and even specified a requirement for judges to be patriots above all, along with government officials. Another boost was expected from the Occupy Central movement's unofficial referendum on universal suffrage, with 91% of nearly 800,000 voters calling for the public to be allowed to name chief executive candidates in the 2017 poll, something the government has already ruled out. And more were expected to join the rally to express anger over pro-government lawmakers' disputed approval last week of initial funding for the government's controversial Northeast New Territories development project. Apart from the main political themes, they marched for all kinds of reasons today. Some were there to demand better rights for cyclists. Others called for equal rights for sexual minorities. And almost all of them directed their anger at Leung Chun-ying, sharing a common slogan demanding his resignation. While Occupy Central organizers chose not to do a rehearsal of their plan to block the streets of Hong Kong's business hub to push for genuine universal suffrage, student groups had other ideas. Activists from Scholarism and the Federation of Students, along with their supporters, were all set to step up their protests and stage sit-ins overnight after the rally on Chater Road and outside the chief executive's office. They did not have a police permit and were prepared to be arrested. The rain late in the afternoon caused complications in Causeway Bay and Wan Chai, where many waited on the sidelines to join the main march and became increasingly frustrated as they were blocked by police trying to ensure traffic would not be interrupted. Many complained that police were deliberately trying to reduce the size of the mass rally, refusing to open an extra lane on Hennessy Road to accommodate the massive crowd. But police in turn complained that protesters were being unreasonable and uncooperative. Every year on this day, we see an outpouring of public discontent with government policies and the people who run our city. It's the same this year, 17 years after the handover. But this time, there's also an added sense of urgency and emotion as Hong Kong starts to find out just how much democracy Beijing will allow here. Emily Sue, ATV News.
Emily Sue is standing by at Chater Road in Central and joins us live now. Emily, tell us what's happening out there.
Thank you. I'm here at the Chater Garden, the ending point of today's protest march. Now, the weather here is extremely hot and humid because just 2 hours ago at 5:30 it started raining. But that didn't seem to have dampened people's spirit because, as you can see, everybody is just sitting on the ground even though it's wet from the rain. Now, from where I'm standing, I can still see that thousands of people are still pouring in from all sides of the park. And just to give you an idea of how many people turned up for today's protest, back in Causeway Bay in Victoria Park, at least one football pitch is still filled with protesters waiting for their turn to start their march, which means the protest will probably last for the next couple of hours. Now, 2:30 Scholarism and the Federation of Students already said they plan to stage a sit-in protest near here on Chater Road, as well as outside the Chief Executive's office. Organizers on stage just announced that the leader of scholarism, Joshua Wong, has allegedly been beaten up. But scholarism has yet to say if that will affect their plans tonight. That's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Okay, thank you, Emily in Central. People from all walks of life rubbed shoulders with prominent democracy campaigners in today's march.
Let's listen to what some of them have been saying.
Again, we hope to send, to reinforce the message, we want genuine universal suffrage. We've waited a long time, and we want Beijing to deliver on its promise.
One man, one vote election shouldn't be just what Beijing wants it to be. They must not screen out candidates for our voting.
The large turnout is here to tell the Central People's Government we want real democracy. Don't give us any fake stuff. We are not accepting anything less than true and real democracy.
Hong Kong citizens and Macau citizens have the same fate in fight for democracy. We hope that Hong Kong will eventually have a genuine system electing the government leaders, and we hope that Macau will follow Hong Kong to have the chance to have genuinely universal suffrage.
The election system is fully destroyed. Everything is not in order. So I come here to voice out what we want as a Hong Kong people, as a Hong Kong citizen.
The government last week, they do not respect all the opinion and then prove that the new territory is the funding.
The election process is not fair enough. It doesn't fulfill the international requirement. So there must be some negative emotion.
A lot of people feel they want to do something, and it's been building up for a long time with a lot of frustration. And I hope it sends a stronger message to Beijing to be serious and sincere in dealing with Hong Kong people.
Beijing's top official in Hong Kong has warned that the size of today's mass rally will not sway the central government into changing its stance on democratic reform.
And Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has marked the anniversary of the handover by urging people not to undermine Hong Kong's stability and prosperity. ATV's Raymond Yeung reports.
Hong Kong's political elite gathered at Golden Bauhinia Square in Wan Chai this morning for the flag-raising ceremony on the 17th anniversary of the city's return to Chinese rule. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying was accompanied by his two predecessors, Donald Tsang and Tung Chee-hwa. Government flying service helicopters displaying the national and SAR flags flew past, while fire services boats in the harbour provided the backdrop. Some in the flag-waving crowd got a chance to shake hands with the chief executive. Leung then led a star-studded lineup at a reception inside the Convention and Exhibition Centre. He and his wife Regina were all smiles as they greeted guests from various sectors, before the chief executive delivered a speech with a warning. We should avoid doing anything that may undermine Hong Kong's stability and prosperity, Leung said, in what could have been a reference to the Occupy Central campaign. Leung gave an assurance that he would do his utmost to forge a consensus in society and achieve universal suffrage in 2017. The chief executive acknowledged the growing animosity among locals towards mainland visitors. Leung went as far as to say the friction is the government's third major task to resolve, the other two being the economy and electoral reform. For his part, Beijing's top man in Hong Kong said China is determined to implement universal suffrage in the SAR. But Liaison Office Director Zhang Xiaoming said the size of today's rally and the 700,000 who endorsed civil nomination in the unofficial referendum would not sway Beijing into altering its stance that electoral reform must conform with the basic law. He added that the central government fully opposed radical and illegal acts by a small group of people, and he urged everyone to abide by the law. Raymond Yeung, ATV News.